Hey, everybody, we are 5 hours late. This is Devin. As you know, if I could speak English, we talk about writing daily tips and things that will inspire you to write and all kinds of wordy, writerly things, whether you are writing a personal letter or you are finishing your great American novel. So today we are going to focus. I'm going to tell you a little story in a second, but today we're going to focus on the inconsistencies in your manuscripts. What do I mean by that? I'm going to get into that in a minute, but I want to tell you what's happened. First off, I'm Devin Galaudet, the editor-in-chief of In the No Traveler. I have an MFA in creative nonfiction, and I'm the author of the upcoming book, 10,000 Miles with My Dead Father's Ashes, and all that's great. And so I have lined up a whole slew of people to interview, and it's really exciting. So I was told that you could do interviews with Facebook Live. I haven't figured that out yet. At least if you can only do it like on an iPhone, and the other person has to have an iPhone. So there's certain requirements that I just don't have. I prefer to do this on my computer where I can have lighting and I don't have to hold a phone and have it be jittery or deal with some weird tripod. So I've been doing it on my computer. And what's more, there's just... So long story short, couldn't do it on regular Facebook. I tried this afternoon. We were going to get into some marketing stuff, writing as marketing, which I think was going to be a really fun episode with my very first guest. And then I tried a system called Be Live, which I guess is some sort of an app. Long story short, you know, their tech support gave us a couple suggestions, but absolutely nothing worked. Like mine just popped right up, and my guest, who was sitting in the other room because we were running a test, couldn't get anything to work. It was a total drag. So we've been playing with it for like the last 5 hours, and I figure at some point, if their app doesn't work, it doesn't work. There's nothing I can do about it, but I'm still confident that there is probably a solution out there. It's probably not through Facebook, and it's probably, well, it's definitely not with the software app that I tried today, but I am hopeful. Anyway, that said, in my manuscript right now, you know, we've been back and forth with the editor for this book, and so I'm on my second go-round. In other words, basically the first go-round was I got all of the editor's notes. The second, and so I went through the entire manuscript and kind of literally took on a case-by-case basis to see what was working. Then on the second go-round, it was really sort of like these extra little bits and pieces of things that I wanted to start including in my book, stuff that wasn't used, stuff that could be used. My wife is giving me a lot of thumbs up right now, which is very cute and heartwarming. So I had gone through the manuscript and I found out, wait, she joined, but I couldn't get her in. All right, I was crossing my fingers that maybe this time it would work. Anyway, so what I ended up doing was going through it again, and I found some interesting things happen. And one of the interesting things that I found happen is that I described certain things. I had originally written the book in a whole series of sort of like almost standalone pieces. And so in doing so, and I know a lot of people end up doing that, so you write a chapter or a short little period or the sort of like 50 paragraphs in between the three dots between these ideas. And then what ends up happening is after you have these 25, 30 standalone pieces that end up getting, massaged into being a book, I realized that there were certain descriptions that I used over and over again, not like 50 times, but, I made reference to really what was my first car, a 1972 gold Chevy van with a bubble on the side. And it was a great van, and I loved it. But because I enjoyed that particular image, that particular line, it was something that I used, I think, probably 4 times. But even though it's only 4 times in a 200-page book, I realized that once I've said it once, that description, the fuller description, like I eventually go on to describe it in greater detail on the inside and things like that, and that was acceptable. But on the outside, it probably was really sort of continuing to write about it in sort of like that same sort of introductory sentence was maybe fine while I was doing standalone pieces, but once the piece is completely together, it was no longer useful to my readership, my audience, while that was going on. So I had to start recognizing that there were certain phrases that, even though they might be 50 pages apart, was worth re-examining and removing. So that was something that I ended up doing. So part of the inconsistencies are you looking for when you have your finished manuscript? Are you describing certain experiences, events, or moments, or even things in the same way over and over again? If that's true, it's time to start, looking at other word choices. And again, we've talked about that before. You may want to look up our episode on the word finder, which is, I think, a fantastic alternative to a thesaurus. But so what ended up needing to happen during this second pass of this final pass of the manuscript is I started looking for repetitiveness in description. In other words, if I described, somebody is having bloodshot eyes, I wanted to start using alternatives to that, because maybe it was completely accurate and appropriate, but for the reader to see that same adjective over and over again isn't probably the way to go, because I want to keep them on their toes and engaged in the writing. The other part is that during the final manuscript process, and this is before it left my hand to go to the editor, what I ended up doing was I would take these packets of information and lie them out. I put them around the room, and then I would shuffle them to find the best, most organic through line in terms of the story presentation, in terms of the individual stories as possible. I realized that there was a point where I had these two chapters that were back to back, and at some point the chapters went like this. In other words, the chapter that followed became a chapter that preceded it, and I had made reference to the following chapter. Now, the truth of the matter is that it's not going to make a huge difference. Somebody's going to have to be really reading closely to kind of catch certain little nuances, but it's obviously my obligation to present the best story possible. And what I don't, it's one thing to foreshadow, and that's an idea we'll talk about in the future, but it's another thing to sort of like talk about events that haven't taken place yet within the story. And so while this wasn't a crucial element to the book, it's something that in my close read at this stage of the game, I have to be making sure that we have comments, because at some point the publisher is going to put out this book, and it's my job, it's my responsibility to make sure it's everything it can be. So here's the thing. I had proofread this book a dozen times before I sent it to a copy editor, who then made their changes over numerous things and gave me notes along the way, because even though my reading is reasonable, there's still a lot to do. And then after the publisher had it and had his team going through this book multiple times, and then having this editor go through it, who's like a pro, he missed some of these components that I'm talking about. So what we're really getting into is the most nitpicky level of stuff, because the truth of the matter is, anytime when I look at Amazon reviews, and there's somebody on every good book, there's going to be a lengthy review. Somebody really went through it and said, here's my 2 cents on this book. They're going to be really nitpicky. Now, the truth of the matter is, some of my favorite books have 1- and 2-star reviews, but my job is I want to try and please everybody. It's not possible, but I'm going to recognize that when even though it's gone through numerous times, I'm still picking at little bits and pieces. I think galleys are due on the 15th of this month, but if I need to take a little bit longer to have it just exactly the way I want it to be, that's what's going to be taking place. So when you have your opportunity, you may want to get out a notepad. If there are certain kinds of lines and the kinds of things that you say over and over again, you may want to make notes of where those kinds of things are. I think I described that apple grove as being lush. So how many times can I use lush without it being sort of like things that, anytime we appear in the apple grove, the writer's going to say something about being lush. So that's something that we want to be aware of. Be thorough and do the best job that you can when you are finishing up your manuscript. I know that I'm going to be, as always, ask any question that you want. I respond to all of them. I think I love writing. Matter of fact, I'm really enjoying this process of offering something new every single day. So ask questions if you want to talk about writing with me, or even better yet, if you know of some technology where I can get two people on Facebook Live, where I can be at home and I can interview somebody, I would be most grateful, because I want to have, not just me being able to offer you great stuff, but some of my many wonderful, talented writer friends to be able to join us to answer questions and have fun as we talk about writing daily. Anyway, that's all we've got for now. I hope you will join us tomorrow. I'm still, during the night, I'm probably going to work on this technology thing. And until then, keep on writing every single day. Thanks so much, guys.